All right, hello once again. This is Jeff Scott from Jeff Teaches Programming, and I sort of misspoke with what I said before, but let me just kind of show you. I am going to go over my fourth iteration of this program does work, and it does use a library. I want to go over what I did, and right now it does work, but basically it works for the GUI version of the program, but I managed to break the console version of the program. So I'm going to take what I've got here and use that as, for lack of better words, a starting or jumping off point. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to rewrite it. So this is right now, I've got a library in here that is called Validation Library. All right, and it has two files in it, Validation.cs, this one, and ValidationBoth, which I'm going to talk about in a little bit. But what I've done here is, if you look, I have added an is there input. So again, what we're doing here is we're checking to see if the value that's passed in has nothing in it. If it does not, we're going to say that that value, height or weight, cannot be empty. So it's what I mentioned in the last program, but I didn't implement. So this one is implemented. Now this one says, again, attempt to come in and parse, see whether or not you can parse the value that you're passing in into an integer. We don't care what the value is, so we're using, again, the discard value. But if the parsing does not work, then we want a message that says that the height or the weight must be a valid integer. All right, so that just says that you need to be able to parse it. Then we've got an is decimal, which is very similar to the is int, but the only change is we're doing it now for a decimal value. In fact, I can even come in here now and I can grab, I can grab all of this, copy it to the clipboard, come down here and quickly create another one that's called is double. All right, we can do the same thing. So this is a double. Okay, and you'll notice how similar these are. Must be a valid double. Really, the only thing that's changing is the message that's coming in here. Let's put a period here, put one here. And we'll put one, we'll say integer here, put one there. All right, and then we've got our range check. So we first, if the parsing didn't work, we've already figured that out from earlier, so it should really work if we get there. But here, if the number is not within range, if it's less than the minimum or greater than the maximum, all right, we say that the value must be between these two things. And we again return that message. All right, so the program itself is similar to what I did previously. All right, we've got our constants. I went back to the old input, calculate, and output, because I went and did much rewrite, to be honest with you, from the last version. And this is more, I didn't even know I still had this. All right. This hasn't changed at all. The calculate BMI status hasn't changed. The output all statistics hasn't changed. The clear all fields hasn't changed. The button, the BTN exit click has not changed. The exit program has not changed. All right. The input and calculate output has. This was the same as what we had before, but this, I had it in a try catch in the last one. Really, other than that, it's pretty much the same thing. The calculate BMI is the same. The is data valid, the ideas behind these are the same. All right, we've got the is success, the error message, but what's different in this one is that what we're doing here is notice that each one of these functions is returning a bool, meaning it's returning true or it's returning false. Well, that's going to work fine, except this right now, this error message is set up. We can get it to work for the console as well. But I'm gonna go and try to massage this, so to speak, and make it work better than it did previously. All right, you'll notice that with each one of these, it's validation.isInt, validation.isWithinRange, validation.isInt, validation.isWithinRange. So it is using in here the ones that we basically have set up in our library. And that's why at the beginning, at the front here, we put a using validation lib, because if we bring that file up, that's the namespace. So we're able to use everything that's in there. All right. Again, there are some things in there, the is double, the is decimal, the is their input. Those aren't being used, but they could be. If we decided to extend this program, we've now got those things available to us as well. So I'm going to do a file, and I'm going to do a save all in here. Now I'm going to try to do something. I'm going to show you what I've been doing, and we'll see if it works or if it doesn't work. How's that? All right. So what I've been doing, and I even went out and went through the Microsoft documentation on this. So I now have 4 iterations of the BMI GUI app, and I want a 5th one. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to come in to my folder where I've got everything in here, and you'll notice some of the stuff that's in here is just garbage, and I'm sorry about that, but I'm going to keep it in there. And I sent yet another email today asking GitHub if they would please allow me to change the password in the JP Scott Rankin account so that I'm able to go in there and set that up. All right, if they don't get back to me, I don't know what I'm going to do next. But I'm going to grab this 4th iteration BMI GUI app, and I'm going to copy it to the clipboard, and I'm going to paste it. So I'm going to have 4th iteration BMI GUI app copy. And I'm going to change this. I'm going to get rid of the copy, but so I'm sure it works. Instead of 4th, I'm going to make this 5th iteration BMI GUI. Now, when I do this, there's a few things I have to do if I want this to work. First thing, I have to double click on here, and the project file, and there it is. I have to change this from 4th to 5th. All right, and then I have to open this file. And there's in here these 2 places where it refers to 4th iteration, that being the root namespace and the assembly name. I have to change those to 5th as well. Now that should fix everything. In other words, right now, basically what I should have is a duplicate. Okay, so if I come in here, you'll notice it does not say 5th iteration BMI GUI. I have to bring it in. So I have to right mouse click, say add existing project. I have to find underneath my C# programs the 5th iteration of the BMI GUI app. All right, and then I have to double click on that proj file. And now it's in there. So I'm going to grab it. I'm going to set it as my startup project, and I'm going to see if it's going to work or not. It should be virtually a clone of the other one. So that works, you know. Okay, so I think it's okay. But I want to do a couple things here, just because I have been doing these things. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to change the color. I'm going to change on here where it says version 3. And the other one should have said version 4. I'm not sure if it did or not. But this is going to be version 5. So there's the I want to find the text property. So this is iteration 05 main screen. All right, and I'm going to change the color. Try to use a color I haven't used yet. There aren't too many anymore. Don't think I've used this pinkish, so I'll use that. And I will also come in here and got that. Okay, and now let's go back to the other file. Again, I don't know if I can change both the colors of these. It looks like I can at the same time. And I want to change this as well. Let's just make sure we didn't break anything. So File, Save All. Again, this says iteration 4 start screen. So it should say iteration 5 start screen. Okay, let's save it. Let's make sure it's our active program. It should be. So we'll guess that it is our startup, and we'll run it and see if we get the pink one to come up here. Looks good. All right, I guess I didn't change one of these, so I'll change that in just a minute. So let's exit, and I'll fix that. There we go. All right, so what I'd like to be able to do right now is to come into this second validation library class that I put in here called ValidationBoth. And I've started writing some code in here already. In fact, a lot of it might even be written already. I don't know. All right, but let me take a look at what I've got, because I've got some notes that I've penciled in here. So again, this is going to be designed to work with both a console app and a GUI app. All right, it's got the same name here, but notice the namespace is the same, but the class name is different. Okay, now everything in here has to be static. And what I'm using in here, I mentioned this in a lecture, but I haven't put that one out there yet. This is called a tuple. And what a tuple is, let me just go back and grab what I grabbed in an earlier lecture. C# tuple. Tuple types from Microsoft Learn. Tuple feature provides a syntax to group multiple data elements together. So in other words, T1 actually holds two different values. It holds a double with the value 4.5 and an int with the value of 3. So what we're saying, and the reason that that's important, is what you can do with a tuple is you can return multiple things like that. That's what I want to be able to do in here. So what I'm saying is I've got something, this is going to represent an error message. This is going to represent whether or not there is input. So it's a Boolean. All right. So we've got this thing in here called message that's basically going to be returning error message. And we've got this string that we're checking that's basically going to be holding the is error message empty. All right, so I tried to put comments in here, and it says here, if I can spell, check to see if the value passed in was empty or not. Whether it was or not, set message accordingly. So message, if we did pass a value in, will be empty. If we had a value passed in, message will be empty. If we didn't have a value passed in, we'll get the equivalent of an error message that has the name like height cannot be empty or weight cannot be empty. But unlike earlier where we just returned, all right, this said bool right here. All right, that had a bool right there, and we had these two things. Now we're returning both the error message and the status of whether or not this was empty. So that's what we've got in here. Oops, right here. The other thing I should mention is if you look in here, this is from the built-in string class. That's, for lack of better words, going to check and see that we looked right here. Was it null or was it white space? I mean, in other words, was there nothing in it? Then we do a similar thing in here for the int32. Again, error message and is error message empty. This again had a bool in there earlier. We're doing a similar thing, but where before we were checking to see if something was empty or not, now we're checking to see if it's parsable or not. We are attempting here with the try parse to parse this into an integer value. We don't care about the value. That's why we say out and we're using that discard value. We don't care. Can we do it? If we cannot, we're going to say height or weight must be a valid integer. All right? So again, very similar. Then we've got in here the is decimal. Same kind of thing. But instead of seeing if we can parse it into that, we're seeing we can parse it into a decimal. All right? Now, let me grab all of this, just because I'm trying to be complete here. Copy it to the clipboard, and I'm on line 70 here. So going back to line 70, I want this to be is double. We're not using that right now, but we could. We're trying to make our library, for lack of better words, kind of pliable. All right, so we're able to use it for multiple things if we indeed want to do that. So this will be is double. All right, so this will be double.try parse. And there we go. And must be a valid double. Same kind of thing. Finally, we've got our is within range here. All right. And I did go into this in a little bit more depth and breadth of coverage earlier in a different lecture. I'm going to have to go back and sort through these lectures. I've got about 5 or 6 that I'm ready to put out there, but I had to change the order around. Not so much because I wanted to, but mainly because I didn't have much choice. So this is the is within range. Okay? You'll notice we already have parsed, so we don't want to put the message twice, so we just return nothing. But here we're coming in, and we are saying do the range check. So if it's less than the minimum or greater than the maximum, it must be between. So it's going to say either height must be between 12 and 96, or it should say weight must be between 1 and 777. All right, so that's everything that we need in that particular example. All right, so that's pretty much, as far as I can tell, looking at my notes here, everything that I needed to put in there. So let's go back into our is the data valid function. I'm going to close this for now. And I'm going to come back into here. And we call this input and calculate output. And output all statistics. Okay, there's the is the data valid function right there. All right, so that is checking it right there. But this is going to be kind of a bigger function than I typically would want to write. All right, so I'm going to put that in, and then when I get done, I'll go back and attempt to output the input and calculate output. All right. I could do it right now, but I have to reference a couple tuples that I'm going to be creating, and I haven't created those yet. All right. Okay, so let's go back down to the is the data valid. Okay. And I've got this success flag and I've got this error message. Those are good. All right. But now everything that I've got in here, I may regret that I'm doing this, but I am going to do this. I'm going to remove it. Okay. Now, don't worry that we've got, a warning, etc. in there right now. So let's just come in here. I'm going to save it just in case I screw up. If you've been following me at all, you know that I have a tendency to do that. All right. So we want to validate the height. We want to validate the weight. With the height, we want to, basically say, checking to make sure that there is a value in the height, checking to make sure that the value is going to be within range as well. Okay. All right. So I want to validate the height. When I get done, I'm going to validate the weight. Now, I'm going to create some variables here, and I'm going to go out there again because quite often using their documentation is better than what I could give you. I could use a little bit of refresher as well. All right. We're going to use var in here. All right. And it says, this isn't a great example, but let's see. Let's see if we go to Learn Microsoft. The idea behind using var is going to be like this, just so you know. The idea is we don't have to give a variable type when we use var. And I was hoping to find a good explanation of that someplace. I'll notice there's a deconstructing tuples and other types. Might be a good thing to take a look at, but let's see. Well, here's one. I don't know. It's here, when to use and not use variable type var. Let's see what it says. Many languages have a loosely typed variable named var. In these languages, it can hold any type of data. As you probably know, C# has supported the variable type var for quite a while. It says ever since the debate has raged on, you should always use it or you should never use it. And they give reasons for it and against it. It said one important point to remember with C# is var is not strongly typed. Once a var is declared, it can only be of the type with which it is initialized. Sorry, it is strongly typed. And a var must be initialized in order to be declared. So why should you use it? It requires less typing. It requires less code changes. It encourages the use of descriptive names. Why shouldn't you use it? It obscures the actual variable type, kind of like the obfuscation I talked about before. It's considered lazy. It makes it hard to know the type you're using. It can't contain nullable types. So how do you do it? And they give some examples. Well, I'm just going to jump right into it and show you how I did it. All right? And hopefully you'll get something out of this. So taking this from the top, I'm going to have 3 vars for height and 3 vars for weight. They're going to be virtually the same thing, So I'm going to have here input we'll call it input MSG, input message height. All right. And is input height okay? In other words, is it going to work? All right. That's going to be a tuple, and it's going to be equal to what? Validation both, which I'm looking at here, and it doesn't have it. So what's the problem? By now, you should know what the problem is. All right. What I have to do is create a reference to it. In fact, let me go back to the validation itself, which I have here. All right. And in fact, let me just go and we will go to validation both here. And I'm going to go to a build and tell it to build the solution. This should work. I wouldn't imagine there'd be, of course it doesn't. It says cannot implicitly, oh, it's because of the stuff that I just put in here. So let's comment this out for right now. All right, so here it's assigned but never used. That's this one. So don't worry about that. That's just a warning. So that for right now, at least that'll be okay. So save all. Let's go and make our validation library the startup project. And let's build it. Project with an output type of class library cannot be started directly. It's because I don't want to run it. I want to build it. And there you go. All right. So now let's see if we can go over to our fifth BMI and let's see if we can add. We want to add a reference. Now we had this one, that validation DLL. We don't want that one anymore. All right. So we're going to go back to browse. Tell it to browse. We're going to go here and now it's only showing validation.dll. That isn't good. So let's do this. I want to see if it was built when I redid this. Actually, that should be okay. It should. I'm hoping that at least it is. Let's see. I'm looking for validation both in there. So there's the validation both that we just added. Double check. There it is. All right, so I'm going to do a build solution on that. Looks like it succeeded. So let me go back and check in here under validation and under bin and under debug. And now I still don't have it. Well, it's showing this validation DLL. It's showing, hopefully that's got both of them in there. Okay, we'll find out in just a minute. All right, so what I should be able to do then, hopefully I'm taping here, right? Good. All right, so what I should be able to come in and do in here is, okay, let me close that. Let me get back to this. Just like before, I'll have to say using validation lib. Okay, but now where we did this, there it is. Okay, what I want to see is if I'm able to use the validation both in here. And don't worry about that. We'll get rid of, hopefully we're going to get rid of that in just a minute. Validation both dot, and it'd be nice to spell it correctly too, wouldn't it? ValidationBoth dot. Okay, and right now it's not showing the stuff that we put in there. Because we want the well, it's stuck right now. I'm going to have to figure this out, and I will. And then I'm going to come back to you because we're almost at about 30 minutes right now, and I think that's long enough for this lecture. I'm going to pick it up right back up here in just a bit.